views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of BronxNet or the program underwriters.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, good morning, good morning. Can I have everyone's attention, please? I want to thank you very much for being here. And as usual, we try to be timely, so I want to get started. We have a couple of presentations. We have a presentation and a response from our last meeting, an update. But what we'll start out with is introductions, just so that we get that out of the way, and then we'll jump right into the meeting as our presenter is getting set up. As some of you might know, I am Marika Scott McFadden. I'm the Deputy Borough President here in God's country, the Bronx, and I'm happy to be here today. And to my left,
Tom Lucania, Director of Community Boards.
Roberto Alvarado, Liaison to Councilmember Diana.
Greg Faulkner, Councilman Cabrera's office.
Farah Rubin, Councilman Jonai's office.
that never happens.
It's a newcomer. She's only here the first time, so she didn't know what to do.
I see.
Good morning, Joseph McManus, Councilmember Torres' office.
George, Community Board 12.
Matt Cruz, Community Board 10.
Rosemary Ginty, Community Board 8.
Emmanuel Martinez, Chair, Community Board 7.
Yvonne Capers, Chair 6.
Good morning. I'm Ken Brown, Chair of Board 5.
You're the chair.
Did I say that?
Don't worry,
whatever.
we won't tell anyone. It'll be just between us.
Roberto Crespo, Chair, Community Board 2.
Betty Bryant Brown, Chair of Board 1.
Oh well. It's just for show.
Alexander Benton, West City.
Okay. Oh, last but not least.
Tracy McDermott, Director of Community Services for Bronx Borough President for the DSG.
Thank you. Pursuant to Chapter 4, Section 85, and Chapter 69, Section 2706 of the New York City Charter, a joint meeting of the Bronx Board Service Cabinet and Bronx Borough Board will take place here today, Thursday, September 26, 2019, at 9:15, 851 Grand Concourse. And as usual, we'll just jump right into our presentations. We have India Porta.
No, I'm Stephanie.
Okay, then I
It's okay.
Why do they do this to me? Can I have your name?
Sure, Stephanie Aline. Stephanie Aline.
Stephanie Aline, and you are with
Yep.
I've been wrong today.
It's okay.
So you are with NYC Charter Revision Commission.
Yes, 2019. Yes.
Okay. So we're gonna have an overview of ballot proposals for the New York City Charter Revision Commission. Take it away.
Sure. Hi. Can I hold this? I'm sorry. I don't know if it works best. Morning. Can everyone hear me?
Probably not.
Okay. Okay. All right. So we'll make like this. So, good morning. My name is Stephanie Aline. I'm an outreach liaison with the 2019 Charter Commission. I'm sure most of you have received a call from us. So if you haven't spoken to us directly, you've probably spoken to one of my colleagues, Ariel Miranda or Chef Kadir. And so I'm here to just present to you a little bit about the 2019 Charter Commission, what it's done, and really what are the ballot proposals, and what are some ways community can get in touch with us to find out more information. So when you came in, there was a packet that was handed to you, and in that packet are three materials that deal directly with the 2019 Charter Commission. And just to go back, the 2019 Charter Commission is the council-created commission with appointees from different elected officials. So we have 4 appointees from the mayor, 4 from the city council speaker, 1 from each of the 5 borough presidents. We have 1 from the comptroller and 1 from the public advocate. And what they've been tasked with doing is taking a top to bottom review of the city's constitution, which hasn't been done since 1989. So it's been a while. In this process, they've held a series of public hearings, 1 in each borough. There were proposals that were decided upon to kind of get an idea of where the commission wanted to focus their ideas, which came in December of last year. We had a round of expert forums. Again, all of this is available online. We also released in April of this year a staff preliminary report, which listed a lot of the direction that the commission went to, in addition to further questions that the commissioners should examine. And then we rounded it out with a final report, which we finalized August 2nd, along with the ballot proposals. So on our sheets of paper here in this handout that you have 3 pieces of information. One is the blue sheet, which says you can vote on that, and that lists the ballot questions and the proposals within each question. There were some 20 proposals, which were grouped into 5 different questions, ranging in topics from elections, police accountability or civilian complaint review board specifically, ethics and governance. We have 1 on the city budget and 1 on land use, which I'll go over in a second. The other sheet looks like this, and this is a series of community information sessions. We've already done a round in each borough for the month of September, and now we're finalizing this phase of outreach out with another round in October. And so we're going to be doing our Bronx one on October the 16th at Bronx Museum of the Arts. So we encourage you to share this information, and if you can, we have this available online, so you can go ahead and feel free to email it, to share it. I think some of you have already gotten the emails from us. So again, if you can continue to share that material, we'd be greatly appreciated. And if for whatever reason you haven't received the email, you can always talk to me after. I can take down your email, making sure we have the correct email address, and we can always send that out to you again. And the last piece of information is the actual ballot questions as they will appear on the ballot when folks go to vote, either for early voting beginning October 26th or on Election Day, November the 5th. In addition to some background material about each of the ballot questions. This is a lot of hefty material, and we know that maybe the everyday person walking by may not have the opportunity to read them, but we've given them to you so that you can be prepared and have that knowledge, so that you know what the material looks like, so that you can also give it out. This material is also available on our website at charter2019.nyc. And so with that, I'll just take a few moments to go over the proposals, and then, I guess from there, if you have a couple questions, or if, like I said, if, you end my session and someone wants to make sure I have your email so that we are in contact with you accurately, that would be great. So the first ballot question relates to elections. And the first proposal is to institute ranked choice voting. So ranked choice voting is a method of voting in which you go to the polls one time, you get one vote, and you rank your candidates, your top 5 picks from 1 to 5. Now, what happens from there is that if one of the candidates gets the majority of the votes, 50% plus 1, they're declared the winner, and then that's it. They are the winner. If a candidate does not receive the majority of the votes, then what happens is the candidate that got the least number of first place votes is eliminated, and the rest of the choices on that voter's ballot, the ballot of the voter who voted for that individual, get transferred to their second place choice. And if that candidate gets eliminated, the vote gets transferred to their third place vote, and so on. So let's say it's November 5th, I'm going to the poll to vote. What I would do is, of the, let's say, 10 or 15 candidates that are running for that particular office, for that particular seat, I rank my top 5 picks. And my first choice pick gets eliminated because not enough folks voted for that individual. Then what happens is my second place, that my ballot gets transferred over to my second place choice. And if not enough people vote for that person in the next round, then goes to my third and my fourth and my fifth. And the idea behind this method of voting is that it would do a few things. Number one, it would be more affordable for the city in the sense that it would reduce the need for voters to come back. So we already know that voter turnout is pretty low. So what winds up happening with this is that a voter would only have to go to the polls one time, as opposed to going for a primary and then going again for potential runoff if that is the seat that we are voting for. So it saves money, it saves voter time, and the idea, what some of the commissioners have heard from some of the advocates, is that it creates friendlier campaigning. So the idea is if you have a base, you can guarantee that base is going to vote for you, but what you also want to do is you want to be considered as someone's second or third place option, so that if that first pick doesn't get it, then maybe you'll get it as the second choice. So that encourages candidates to reach out to broader communities, expand their base, get to know voters that maybe they hadn't traditionally reached out to before. So that's what some of the advocates are saying about ranked choice voting, some of the pros about ranked choice voting. So that's going to be proposal number 1 under ballot question number 1. The other 2 ballot questions, the other 2 proposals under this ballot question relate to changes that the city needed to make in order to keep up with election law changes on the state level. So the first one is just to ensure that when redistricting is done, that the new district lines are finalized in time for candidates to begin petitioning to get on the primary ballot for city council in 2023. And then the second one relates to, thank you so much. So the timing of special elections. So currently, if a seat for an elected official becomes vacant, there is a certain amount of time between that seat's vacancy and when you vote to fill that seat, known as the special election. So for borough presidents, city council persons, the public advocate and comptroller, that's 45 days, and for the mayor, that's 60 days. So what this proposal would do is that it would expand that time to 80 days. And this is to really accommodate the Board of Elections to make sure they have enough time to send out military ballots and absentee ballots in accordance to the change in state election law. So the second ballot question deals with the Civilian Complaint Review Board. And the Civilian Complaint Review Board, I'm sure many of you are familiar with them, but they investigate civilian complaints of police misconduct under 4 main categories: excessive force, abuse of authority, discourteous behavior, or offensive language. If a investigator, CCRB investigator, does an investigation and determines that indeed misconduct has occurred, what they will do is they will recommend discipline to the police commissioner. Currently, the police commissioner is the only individual that can discipline a uniformed NYPD police officer. So the police commissioner has an option. They can either take the recommendation of the CCRB for discipline and impose that on the officer, or they can change that and opt for some other form of discipline. What our first proposal under this ballot question number 2 would do is, if the police commissioner decides upon another course of discipline, they would need to submit a memo to the CCRB explaining why that would be in all cases. And I had another point to make, but I'll skip that for now. Again, the 4 main areas that CCRB investigates are excessive force, abuse of authority, discourteous behavior, or offensive language. Anything that falls out of those 4 categories is usually turned over from the CCRB to the NYPD Internal Affairs Bureau. And the Internal Affairs Bureau will investigate it and handle it from there. What our second proposal would do is, if an investigator suspects that there is a false statement given by an NYPD police officer during the course of an investigation, the CCRB investigator can look into that and recommend discipline. So that would be the second proposal. The third proposal deals with the size of the board. So currently the board consists of 13 persons. The third proposal would expand that to 15 persons, so that there would be 5 appointees from the mayor, 5 from the city council. There would be 3 designees from the police commissioner, 1 appointee from the public advocate, and 1 new appointee from the city council. That would be a joint appointment from the city council speaker and the mayor that would act as the chair. The other 2 proposals deal with the CCRB budget to make sure that the number of investigators can keep up with the number of NYPD uniformed police officers. And then the last proposal deals with subpoena power. So currently the ability to issue subpoenas from the CCRB lies within the board, and that can be kind of time consuming for an investigator. So by allowing the board to vote to give subpoena power to the executive director, what that can do is it can speed up the process for investigators so that they can acquire either materials or witnesses a little quicker. So proposal number 3 relates to ethics and governance. The first 2 deal with COIB, which is the Conflicts of Interest Board. They're tasked with, knowing and being well versed with conflicts of interest, educating all city employees on conflict of interest law, as well as investigating suspected violations of conflict of interest law and recommending discipline. So what the commission heard was perhaps it would be better to have different elected officials appoint members to the Conflict of Interest Board to ensure that the board is unbiased. So what this proposal would do is that it would change the structure of the board from 5 appointees to the mayor to 3 appointees from the mayor, 1 appointee from the public advocate, and 1 appointee from the comptroller, all with the advice and consent of the city council. So advice and consent just basically works. The mayor would put forward a nominee or a candidate. The city council would then vet that candidate. They would hold a hearing and ultimately vote on those candidates to appoint them to COIB. Additionally, what it does is it scales back on some of the political activity of COIB members. So that proposal would also limit the amount of participation in local political campaigns that COIB members can have, in addition to limit the amount of donations they can make to any campaign contributions they can make to a particular candidate in local elections. The other 3 deal with the citywide, one of the proposals deals with the citywide director of minority and women-owned business enterprises, which is a program that supports resources and education to minority and women-owned businesses so that they can acquire city contracts. So what would happen is the citywide director of MWBE, the idea behind this proposal is that they would have a legal requirement to report directly to the mayor, in addition to be supported by the mayor's office of minority and women-owned business enterprises. The other one is post-employment post-employment ban. So currently the post-employment ban for senior appointed and elected officials is 1 year. So after they have served either the government or agency, they have to remain away from that government or agency for 1 year. But this proposal would extend that to 2 years. And it's just to really limit conflicts of interest between current and former city government employees. There's always one I forget. What's going on? Oh, the law department. So the law department acts as the city's lawyer. They review contracts and leases. They also represent and advise elected officials like the mayor and city council members. And so the head of the law department is the corporation council, and that corporation council is appointed by the mayor. So another proposal under question number 3 would be to change the process in which the corporation council gets appointed from directly appointed by the mayor to through the advice and consent of the city council. And again, the way that would work is that the mayor would put forth a nominee or a candidate. The city council would take up that nominee, they would vet them, they would hold a hearing, and they would vote on whether or not to appoint that individual to the head of the law department. Ballot question number 4 deals with city budget. So there are quite a few proposals under this question too. One deals with the rainy day fund. Currently, the city is prohibited from making a rainy day fund due to local barriers as well as state barriers. So what this proposal would do is that it would alleviate the local barriers so that when the state restrictions expire in 2033, the city can create a rainy day fund, which would act as a savings plan for the city so that in case there's an economic downturn or an emergency or a natural occurrence, the city can be financially prepared. The other ballot proposal is to offer a standard for the budget of the public advocate and borough presidents so that there is essentially a baseline amount that they would have, that from there any administration going forward can move up but not necessarily down from unless there's an explanation from the mayor. So it's to standardize a minimum for the budget. There's so many proposals. Require the mayor to submit a revenue estimate. So revenue estimate acts as a number that the mayor receives of non-property taxes. So it's pretty much the money that the city can expect to receive over the next year from non-property taxes. And the mayor gives that number over to the city council so they can have an accurate assessment of the income that the city will receive so they can properly allot for the city's budget. What this proposal would do is it would require the mayor to submit that number earlier, so by the end of April, the mayor would have to submit that number. The mayor can make edits to that number beyond the end of April, but they would just have to offer an explanation if they submit that after May 25th. Budget modifications. So again, the city has a financial plan. If the mayor wants to make any changes to that financial plan, they have to do so within 30 days of updating the city's financial plan and send an explanation as well. And then the last proposal deals with ULURP. And really, I know all of you are well versed and comfortable and confident in ULURP applications and that process. To just quickly go over this one, there's only 2 proposals under this ballot. But number 1, it would be that the Department of City Planning would have to offer a project summary report for ULURP applications that are to be certified 30 days before certification so that affected community boards and borough presidents know what ULURP applications are coming down the line. In addition, the CP would have to make this available online so that the public can access it and community boards can access it. Further, what this proposal, the second proposal under this question would do is it would expand the time during the summers that community boards have to review ULURP applications. So if a DCP certifies an application in June, then community boards get an additional 30 days for a total of 90 days to review the ULURP application. And if the application is certified between July 1st and July 15th, they have an additional 15 days for a total of 75 days to review that application. So that's pretty much an overview of the ballot questions and the proposals therein. Just one more thing to say, you know, as you all know, voter registration, the deadline is October the 11th, so any folks that need to register, make sure they register by October 11th. October 26th begins early voting. These questions will be on that ballot, and of course November 5th is election day, so we encourage folks to get out and vote. Another thing, as staff, we are completely neutral. We don't take an opinion one way or the other. We are definitely here to give out materials and to give out information. And the last thing, the most important thing, is we are having community information sessions during the month of October, and we encourage community to come out. We will be doing a very similar presentation to what I just gave you now, although we might go a little bit more in depth to make sure that folks from the community understand more about the 2019 Charter Commission, who we are, what we've done from beginning to end, and the ballot questions. And then from there, we break out into like a resource fair style setup where each table is a ballot question, so they can learn from staff and learn from our policy staff and our legal staff, as well as our outreach staff, what's going to be on the ballot, and really prepare them for the language that's going to be on the ballot. If they early vote October 26th up to Election Day. Again, that's why we've handed you the ballot questions. Again, all of this material is online. Our website is charter2019.nyc. Last but not least, you will probably be getting another round of phone calls from us. We look forward to talking to you. We hope you look forward to talking to us. Thank you.
Wonderful question.
Yeah, can you?
Use the mic.
Microphone.
I think I can hear.
Okay. Can you please explain again the way the ballots are going to be counted for the elected officials? Because, you know, it's sort of confusing on what you're stating.
For ranked choice voting specifically?
Well, the mayor, public advocate, city controller, city council.
Are you talking about for which ballot question?
On the ratings. How does that?
Yeah, so for ranked choice voting. So the way ranked choice voting works is you go to the poll and you have one vote and you get one ballot. And on that ballot, you will have all the candidates listed. So, you know, for public advocate, we had some 17 candidates listed. So what you would do is you would rank your top 5 picks from 1 to 5. And if one person receives the majority of the votes, that's it. Done. But if nobody receives the majority, if nobody receives 40% of the votes, then what happens is the person who has received, the candidate that has received the least number of first place votes gets eliminated. And those ballots, again, they have option number 2 still there, option number 3, option number 4, option number 5. What then happens is that ballot, that vote, gets transferred over to that person's second place candidate. So if that person gets the majority of the votes, then there's a winner. But the idea is to recount those votes and to continue to eliminate the least voted for individual so that there is ultimately a winner. And the idea here is that what a lot of people say, or what sometimes people argue, is that although a winner was selected, they weren't selected by a majority.
What constitutes majority?
So majority for New York State is 50% plus 1. 50% plus 1 or 40%.
50 plus 1?
Yeah. So the idea is that would be the majority. And so if you reach that threshold, then you won according to ranked choice voting.
And my second question is on the conflict of interest board. You're saying that there's going to be 3 by the mayor?
Yes.
1 by the controller?
Yeah, comptroller, yes.
and one from the public advocate?
Yes.
How do we assure that there's representation from the board, from the borough in this process? Because from what from what I'm seeing is that you're just eliminating the borough president's office right out.
That's a good question.
Excellent point.
That's a good question. I'm not sure. I'm not being rude. I'm just gonna take down your question as a note, and I'm gonna pass that along.
Can you get back to us on that?
What? Sure. What community board are you from?
Excuse me?
What community board are you from?
I'm from Community Board 2.
2? Okay.
Okay, I think that in terms of getting back to you on that.
Yeah, I meant the borough president's office.
Right, there's not anything to get back to you on per se. This is the ballot question as it stands.
Right.
It's pretty straightforward, as you stated, that the community/borough presidents are not a part of the process when it comes to this new initiative, and it's something that you, as well as voters, should consider when you're voting for or against a particular ballot issue. It is simply your point. Where's the community input as it ranks for this? Yes, miss. I don't think
So, a couple questions about ballot question number 5. So, what constitutes a detailed report? And who determines what that is?
That's a good question. I'm not sure.
So, it's a really important point because, quite frankly, this whole thing is completely watered down and doesn't really do anybody any justice if the detailed report isn't really effective. Because what happens is that these reports, secret and all these other documents can be thousands of pages, and if the detailed report doesn't give people really information that they can use, then it's really a waste. And then my second point is this second piece right here. It doesn't really help the community board because, again, the whole issue is that we're getting these documents. That went out again. The commission itself, the city planning commissions, gets 50 days to review these documents. They are the ones who certify these documents, and again, we're still getting 60 days to review these documents, and we get no heads up in terms of what's in these documents and what some of the impacts are. So it's just a comment. I know it's a ballot question, but and the detailed report is really important. It's important for people to know what's in that detailed report, who's going to determine what the criteria are for that report. So.
Yeah, that's a great question, and I don't really want to offer you an answer that's speculation. I'd like to offer you something that's a little more direct. So I do want to run that up and just be clear.
What that means is, I think, if this is going to be a ballot question and people are going to, they want people to weigh in on that, my version of the detailed report versus your version of the detailed report would be completely different.
Understandable.
Okay. Early voting starts when?
October 26th. So, the key is that these ballot questions are pretty final. Implementation is something I think to be discussed, but these are the official ballot questions that are going to be put forth that New Yorkers are going to vote on.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yes. Yeah, my question involves the ranked voting. New York City at one point had ranked voting in the school board elections.
Yeah.
And very often they were very confusing. Have you taken precautions to make sure that some of the problems that happened with ranked voting when we did the school board elections through ranked voting are not going to occur? And also, when you do the you go back and you start eliminating the candidates, what's to prevent a candidate from simply running, I'm not strong in one community, I'll run somebody, you commit to place me as number 2. I'm not going to get to know that community. I just find somebody in that community who I know might be a little popular and say, put me number 2 on your slate, and I know they're going to be eliminated, and I just simply get those votes.
That's interesting. So,
they didn't consider this when they were making this a ballot proposal?
Absolutely. They did a lot of research. When it comes to ranked choice voting, it's something that's already been instituted in, I think, 11 different territories in the U.S. and about 4 different states. So it's something that is currently active and currently being employed. That's actually one of the criticisms that the 2019 Charter Commissioners did here, which is how do we prevent confusion? How do we employ voter education and outreach? Again, when we're talking about the implementation stage of these processes, that's something that has to be decided by a bunch of different people. But another thing that comes up is language access. So how does the Board of Elections ensure that, number one, voters are educated about the process, and number two, there is content available in multiple languages so that all voters can feel confident voting? And that's something that I don't have a definitive answer on. With regard to your second question, which was essentially the way in which candidates would employ tactics to communities to sway voters one way or another, I mean,
the chances are that these things are going to happen. So it sounds like we've put together ballot proposals without a thought as to how we're going to implement them after they get elected. So assuming these proposals pass, then we're going to kind of figure out how these things are going to work.
I think the idea is that currently in our election system, there are ways to disenfranchise voters, and this is my personal opinion a little bit. There are ways to disenfranchise voters, and that system has been around a lot longer than ranked choice voting. So
can you speak to what you mean by that?
Sure. I think the idea is that if you're going to look for ways in which a voter system is imperfect, there are a myriad of ways to do so. With our current system,
I think imperfection is different than disenfranchising. Can you speak to your comment about disenfranchising?
Yeah, I think the idea is that, you know what? No, I'm gonna pull back from that statement. Because again, that gets into a lot of my personal thoughts, and I'm here as a representative of the 2019 Charter Commission, so I'm going to pull back on that. But what I will say is that's a great discussion to have offline, and when it comes to implementation of these proposals, I think there are a lot of conversations that should still happen. So I'll leave it at that.
Thank you.
I think language is important, and if we're talking about disenfranchising, then we need to distinguish that from those who are inclined to find problems and then not participate, which are two wholly different courses of action. So I think disenfranchisement implies that there is a mechanism in the system, and so we need to be very, very cautious about how we use our language. To the gentleman's point, I think it might be helpful if you, having the history of the school board, if you had a couple of vignettes or something that you can explain for everyone that's watching and paying attention who does not have that historical knowledge, to inform how you see the ranked choice voting, in how you've seen it in practice. And I'll get to you, Mr. McManus.
Sure, Madam Deputy. I'm happy to, having participated in the school board elections and the ranked voting, one of the problems is voters did not understand. So voters would come to you and say, well, I voted for you, but the number one votes are the ones that counts, but they felt if they voted for you number 5, they actually supported you. So there was a lot of confusion about the process. People weren't clear as to how to pick candidates. The ranked voting favored folks who had big kind of organized groups, unions and things behind them. They were more favored because it was easier for them to get the number one votes. I think there were a number of problems with the count. I don't know, how long will it take? I assume it would take several days to get a count.
Yeah.
You wouldn't do it on the same night. So then how long does it take before we get results?
No, it stands to reason that the Board of Election will be able to tell you pretty much in the same space of time, whether you have 50%, someone got 50%.
Yeah, but then if no one gets 50% and
Well,
you
that
have to
may
then
take
go through
longer.
the process,
That may take longer.
that probably is going to take longer because now you have multiple, you have a lot more candidates, possibly because people are now going to run kind of unofficial slates. So now you've got to go through that ranking. It just seems that, I mean, it could work. Maybe there's a plan for it, but it just sounds like those things weren't taken into consideration. And one of the big complaints about the previous ranked voting that we tried was that it was just very confusing. At the end of the day, when they were, before the school boards were eliminated, they had talked about just going through a regular voting system where they would eliminate, they called it proportional representation, proportional voting. They wanted to eliminate that and go back to just voting, straight up on the ballot because it became very confusing for candidates, very confusing for voters. It was hard to educate people about how to actually cast a vote, and
people felt confused and disinformed.
And so people, because of that, you had less participation because it was very confusing. And I just think that I was hoping that there would have been a plan that would show once this passes, this is how we're going to implement that, and this is how we're going to avoid the problems that we had with New York City's experience.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. McManus.
I have just a few questions. Every one of these bullet points going to be voted on individually?
Not individually, but in the ballot questions. So within each question are several different proposals, and that's outlined in our ballot questions themselves, and then also the other blue sheet that I gave you.
Are they going to be on the
It
ballot?
lists the questions and then the ballot proposals.
Are all these bullet points going to be on the ballot?
I'm sorry?
Are all these bullet points going to be on the ballot?
Yes, so it's
Okay.
going to be written in the language.
All right.
So just to be clear, I think the question that you're asking is, do you have to vote for the whole initiative, or is there a piecemeal?
Oh, I see. No.
So it's all or
nothing.
Yeah.
Of
For the
each
ballot
one of these major topics.
yes,
Okay.
exactly. And under the major topic, it's yes or no. So if there's one in there that you don't necessarily agree with, as a voter, you will have to make a choice whether to vote for the totality of it or not.
I got it.
There
I got
isn't.
it.
Well, I know you get it. It's more for
Okay.
clarity.
On the land use part, now, I used to chair the land use committee on Community Board 11, and they always pop these things on us, especially the city. Like 30 days, you got to figure this out. Now, the city, most of the times, they were working on these projects for 2 years. Why can't they give us that heads up? I mean, why 30 and 60 days? I mean, these are complicated issues. He's taken dozens of, affected communities most of the times. So, in my opinion, as soon as the city or a developer starts or thinks about doing a ULURP, I think the borough president, the community board should be notified right away, because after being there 10 years, I have a feel for it. But 99% of the people in New York City don't. They need to be either cajoled that it's a good project or given the pluses and the minuses, and that takes a long time. So, and with the CCRB, to give the executive director subpoena power, I would never give one person subpoena power. I think any time subpoena power is executed, it should be, in my opinion, some sort of committee or some people that are elected to something.
So to clarify on the CCRB, it's really to give the board the option to vote to either give to the executive director or take away from the executive director subpoena power. And again, the goal is to make investigations quicker. So that not investigations overall, but the process, so that an investigator can get the materials that they need to do the investigation properly, can happen in a timely fashion.
Get this straight. When you first mentioned it, it seemed like this proposal would automatically give the executive director subpoena power.
No, so that's also why we give you the materials, because I do a quick overview overview so that I'm not here for, 2 hours.
Right.
But the idea is that the board would have the ability to vote to give the executive
Okay,
director
fine,
subpoena
fine,
power,
okay.
or they can take it away.
That's not explicit here, though.
In the CCRB.
It says authorize subpoena power for the
Yep.
CCRB executive director.
And honestly, again, if we were to write out all of the materials, all of the in-depth information on these short form materials, it would be a lot longer. But that's also why we've supplied you with the ballot questions themselves, so that you can review that and have that knowledge so that it's written more explicitly there. And then if you want further knowledge, we do have our final report. And in our final report, we have charts, graphs, background, etc. And also our preliminary report that we released in April has a lot of that fundamental information as well.
I think I get it, but I'm going to guarantee you 99.9% of the voters are not going to get it.
But what we're...
Let me finish with
Sorry.
this. I've been doing this stuff for 25 years, and I've been at hundreds of elections by union, public elections, and most voters, if it's complicated, they don't vote for it. All these proposals, not that they're complicated, but they're long. There's a lot of parts to it.
Yeah.
You studied a whole year in school, and then you took a test at the end of the year. And you had lots of information. This is the first time I'm hearing about it, and I work for a city council person. So the electorate, I'm sure, I would say none of them have heard about it. Or very, very few.
Yeah.
So it's just a personal comment. Thank you.
Sure, thank you. And not to cut you, but what I do want to emphasize is we are having the community information sessions, and we do want folks to come out. We do want folks to ask these questions. We do want folks to have clarity. And so as much as possible, we encourage you to share the community information sessions and attend, if possible.
Let me finish. It's just a little bit too late. Thank you.
We have a question over here. And then you, Mr. Brown. Sorry for the pointing.
Morning. I just had a question related to the officers, the general election. If one is voting for a candidate and they decide not to vote for the other 4 candidates, does that invalidate their ballot?
No, if you only want to vote for one person or put one person as your preference, you can. What you can't do is, or what doesn't work for the ballot is if you try to vote for the same person twice. So what the idea is that each ranking, if a person gets eliminated, you're transferring that vote over to a new candidate. So the idea is to clearly vote for who it is you want in the order. Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Let me just piggyback on that question.
Yes.
So
Correct. That's the question.
if you only vote for one candidate,
That's your option.
then your vote is, and that candidate does not get number 1, then you have no contribution for the rest of the vote. So that person technically loses their vote at that point.
I wouldn't say they lose their vote. I mean, the idea is their vote is
I'm
still
sure you
counted,
wouldn't say that. But in fact, they don't contribute to the end result of the election at that point if you only vote for one person. Should be clear to everyone at what point they need to. Yes, Mr. Brown.
Thank you. To what extent would the commission be able to post at their website media sources that review charter questions and analysis and papers that can be submitted and made available through the website outside of testimony?
Oh, so you mean like our final report and such?
Huh?
Do you mean like our final report and the ballot questions?
No, independent reporting, like other cities that have experience.
Oh, okay. So one thing that
other media reports and analyses of that, things like that.
Sorry.
Or advocacy testimony that you propose.
Sorry. So I'm clear. In our final report, we have cited different sources. So what you can do is you can look at the citations, which are, footnoted on each page and are linked to in the final report if you view it online. So you can click on those documents. And also the names of some of the groups that either advocated for a particular proposal are also listed, so you can also look up those groups. But they're not listed on our website, like in their own separate section called citations. It's really within the body of the final report. It's within the body of the final report. So in like the citation section, it's linked to.
Advocacy or analysis outside of testimony or reports?
I can make that suggestion. I don't know that it'll be done, but I can make the suggestion to isolate citations and independent resources for additional information. Okay.
Mr. Brown, I don't think it works that way. I don't think it works that way. They're not going to. The commission doesn't necessarily give you competing theory on what they're suggesting to be on the ballot. I think that plays out throughout the process, and then you do your homework.
That's not what I meant.
I think, what he's asking for is like the additional reports that we looked at and charts and data, those sorts of analyses.
That would be fine. No, what I meant
And
is...
a lot of that is material that's linked into our final report already, so it's there. And then you want it, your suggestion is to isolate it onto a separate page, landing page on our website. And so that's your suggestion that I will take and ask. But I doubt because it's already embedded within the final report.
Thank you. We have a gentleman here, and then you, Mr. Crespo. I don't know. I'm not even sure this mic is working.
Hi. So two things. Looking over again ballot question 1, it applies to primary and special elections. Is there a reason the commission decided not to, so general elections, the ones in November, they would still be the same, like you vote
Yes.
for one person and that's it. Is there a
Yes.
reason why general elections weren't included in this?
The idea is that you would then have sort of the candidate selected. So from there, it's one or the other. With these, there can be broader numbers of candidates per election. And so it's really for that sort of a process. So if you have, let's say, 17 candidates or so, you can really refine that down into one choice without folks having to come back for a potential runoff election.
All right. And then one more question. So within all of these ballot proposals, in order for them to pass, it's just 50% plus 1, a simple majority of voters.
Simple, yeah.
Okay.
Mr. McGinnis made it very clear, especially with the land use and my colleagues here on this side of the table on the boards. Though you're saying 60 days, 9 out of 10 times, the present procedures doesn't even give the boards enough time to review. And I don't understand who came up with this plan, but didn't, there should have been a lot more coverage out there and input from the communities so like that you can get a proper bill for people to vote on. Right now, you got 12 boards here, and 12 boards probably didn't know all of the stuff that you're presenting here. As to the elections, I agree. If you got so many number ones and you didn't even meet the threshold of 50 plus 1, but you're at 49. So if you're number 2 on it, does that mean that carries over to the number 1?
If you're number 2, does that carry over to number 1? Yeah. So the idea is if you're number 1 and you receive the least amount of first place votes, then it gets transferred over to your number 2. So the idea is the number that you're at, if you're at candidate number 2 and they haven't received enough of the votes in order to constitute the win, then it would get transferred over to the person's third place choice.
But if you have sufficient number 2s,
if you have a winner, you have a winner. That's it. If a winner is declared, a winner is declared, then you stop from there.
No, but if you don't have sufficient number 1s, like you meet 40, you get 49%. in your town, that's 49%. But you're saying it's 50 plus 1.
Yeah.
So now I'm 49, right? What happens to if I come in with another 500 votes at number 2?
Okay, can I? I think so it's not, let's say there are 5 candidates. The first person, the person in first place has 49. The person in second place has something slightly under that. It's the 5th person, the votes in 5th place that get redistributed. Correct?
Well, it would be the second place. I'm not sure. And I'm sorry, it could be my hearing, but I think you said it's the 5th place votes that go.
The person that got the least amount of votes.
First place votes. The vote. The ballot
That would make you the 5th person. That would make you number 5 in the ranking.
Okay, I'm sorry. Yes, I understand what you're saying now.
Okay, right?
Yes.
Okay, so what I said to him was correct.
Yes.
Okay.
And you want the public at large to vote on this on November 5th.
Yes.
Or early voting October 26th.
Or the early voting. But there hasn't been any commercials, anything on the press, nothing to the communities. You know, I don't know who wrote this. This commission must have been asleep when they did this. Because honestly, it's going to create more havoc than what we already have.
So I just want to, this young lady has come to present the proposals as they are for voting. She's giving us as much information as she can to explain these positions. I would dare say she wasn't in the room when they were created, so I think to be fair, we have to consider that these are the proposals. Questions related to explaining them are appropriate, but the other ones about how and who should have been there, who should have told, I don't think she's in a place to be able to respond to that, and that might not be fair to her.
You're correct, Madam Deputy, but all I just wanted to make sure is that it gets recorded that the community itself were not part of this, and they should have been. You know, we're just left right out.
I dare say, and I'm not even, this shouldn't be construed as advocacy, but the community is a part of it in the voting process.
Yes.
So if you read it and you don't like it, you don't vote for it. If you read it and you are swayed by the appeals, you vote for it.
I understand.
That is community involvement. Yes, Mr. McManus.
Most elections I think about large all these proposals going to be put up, displayed like the ballot is displayed, or just the bullet point of the top one.
You're asking on election day, will they be printed and posted up?
Yes.
I believe typically that's how Board of Elections works.
No, but I meant the 22 bullet points going to be all there, or just
the question,
it
just
will
the
be
ballot question.
the language as it's written on these ballot questions that we've handed out. That is the language that would be up there. No. It's the packet. So that's the ballot questions, and then there's additional information about the ballot questions. Not that one, but the one that says ballot question.
The only thing will be...
Yes, so that information, so there's question number 1, question number 2, question number 3, question number 4, question number 5.
There will not be any additional... We do this... there are ballot questions often, and there's no explanation of the ballot question, and that's what it will look like on Election Day. It'll be posted as it is normally is. Yes. It'll, whatever the question is.
Yeah.
And the little bubble.
Just the beginning.
Yes or no? If I won't speak to that. Do we have any additional questions? This is very interesting from a civics perspective. Very interesting. Okay.
Well, may I?
Absolutely. I was going to let you off the hook. But go right
I just
ahead.
want to say thank you so much for your time, and I understand and I hear you, and I appreciate hearing you. And I understand that sometimes, the things that we're presenting aren't the most popular, but honestly, I appreciate hearing it. And I do take it back, and I do talk to my boss, and we do as a team talk. You'll definitely be getting calls from us. We've called a few times, with regard to our September information sessions. We're calling again. We sent an email earlier this week with regard to October community information sessions. So we'll keep calling and we'll keep reaching out. Again, if anyone wants, I'll wait over there for a little while, not to just be disruptive, but if you want to make sure that I have your proper email and, the best phone number to contact you at, please let us know and we'll do our best. But thank you so much for your time this morning. And thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So, moving along, last month, at our last meeting, we had some questions and
Sorry.
That's okay.
You got it in there,
and
man.
we're so happy to have our borough commissioner from DOT, as I always say, friend to the Bronx, Eduardo Lopez, to address the particular question from last month. Does anybody remember what that question was? It was something about sidewalks.
Good morning. Good morning. Okay, you hear me? Okay, great.
You kid.
So, at this point, I'm fine taking questions. I'll just give a brief summary of how our sidewalk program works. And yesterday I did talk about some of the changes that were announced by the mayor and the New York State Assembly Speaker. But according to the New York City's administrative code, property owners are responsible for the upkeep and maintenance of their sidewalk. Meaning that if they don't have a sidewalk, it is up to the property owner to build that sidewalk. If there are defects on the sidewalk, it is up to the property owner to fix them. The role that DOT plays is that we inspect sidewalks throughout the city for all properties. And if our inspectors go to a property and notice defects on a sidewalk, we will issue what is called a notice of violation. That notice of violation informs the property owner that there are sidewalk defects and that they have 75 days to make corrections. After 75 days, if no corrections are made, the city reserves the right to go and make the repairs and then bill the property owner. The property owner will then receive a surcharge on their next property tax bill. And the Department of Finance does allow, upon request, that you can enter into a payment agreement for installments to pay that surcharge to repair your sidewalk. In addition to the notice of violation, the property owner will receive a preliminary inspection report. The preliminary inspection report is a diagram of your property and of your sidewalks that will show you what the defects are and where they are. The preliminary inspection report will also identify those defects which we refer to as non-accessible. Now, after you get the initial notice of violation and you get the preliminary inspection report, property owners do have the ability to ask for a reinspection, and they do so by calling 311. Now, the city does have a program for repairing sidewalks, but that program is the only properties that are eligible or that we go out are 1, 2, 3 family homes. And in addition, we are also every year going out and repairing sidewalks of NYCHA. So if you are a 1 or 2, 3 family home and you have an open notice of violation, the Department of Transportation has a contract that it rotates around the community boards and around the city every year. We gave a packet with the information about which community boards have active contracts and have upcoming contracts. I gave that to everyone yesterday. So what we do is we will then, before any work happens, we will notify the property owner, informing them that they have an open notice violation and that our sidewalk contractor will go out and make the repairs. And that usually happens within 30 to 60 days before any work begins. If you are not a 1, 2, 3 family home, this program does not make repairs. If you are a commercial property or a nonprofit, we don't make repairs. The only properties that we do make repairs outside of the 1, 2, 3 family homes are NYCHA properties. If your preliminary inspection report shows that some of the sidewalk damage is non-accessible, either because it's due to tree damage or any other city property that is damaging the sidewalk, when we make the repairs, we will not charge you for the damage done by trees or other city property on the sidewalk. So that is how the program has worked, and that is basically how it will continue to work. But there is one important change that I talked about yesterday, and I'll repeat it again today. If you have sidewalk damage, from now on, if you have sidewalk damage that is exclusively from tree root damage, meaning that the sidewalk is lifted or being broken up because of tree roots, and that is the only damage you have, it's from the tree, you will no longer be getting a notice of violation, and that will no longer be sent to the, which means that nothing will be sent to the county clerk, and if your violation is due to only tree damage, you will not be getting a lien. You will still get a notice from the Department of Transportation informing you that there's a sidewalk damage, but we won't be calling it a notice of violation. We're still figuring out the correct legal terminology to use, and the county clerk won't be notified, so there won't be a lien. In addition, we are going to begin the process of looking through the existing over 50,000 open notice of violations for 1, 2, 3 family homes, and we will pull out the violations that are only due to tree damage, and we will then work with the county clerk to remove the liens on those properties. In the future, if we get contacted by a homeowner who is trying to sell their home and only has tree damage, we will look to expedite those repairs. So that's kind of like the basic format. I'm ready to take questions at this time.
Wait, hold on, George. Are you going to reiterate the question from last week?
Yes.
Is it, George? Help me.
I can't hear a word you're saying, so I'm sorry.
Help me stay on track. Is this about last month or something new?
No, it's about this, sidewalks.
About what he just said, or about, because you started
It's
the
about something
conversation last
I have a
month.
question in regards to what he just spoke about.
Okay.
Is that not keeping on track, or?
I think what Madam Deputy is asking is, what was the question you raised last month?
Oh, this is not about yesterday. I was inarticulate yesterday when I asked you. You just stated that NOVs and liens on properties were no longer going to be given in regards to tree roots. Correct.
Right, but let's be clear. If you have only
tree root.
Right. So if you have tree root damage and other sidewalk damage, you still will get an NOV.
And you'll still get a lien.
And you'll still get a lien.
So nothing's really changed.
Except for those who only have exclusive damage from trees. If you have
But the
exclusive...
thing is, you said yesterday and you just stated that nobody would get a bill for tree root damage. So if you were putting a lien on a house that was getting tree root damage, the city was in error.
No. In the past, this is a new policy that the mayor announced a couple weeks ago. So I'll try again. The policy up until 3 weeks ago was all NOVs that were issued also came with a lien.
Say that again.
Any NOV that the Department of Transportation issued for sidewalk violation also was sent to the county clerk for a lien. Any notice of violation to any property.
My question would be, how do you ensure, now that the city is, how do you get the money back from people who owe the city money? 50,000 NOVs that you're reviewing now, or liens that you're reviewing now, are tax dollars that are owed to the city because you fixed the problem.
No. So NOVs are not a fine.
You're right, they're not. The lien is based on...
And the lien is just a hold, meaning what happens is, what often happens is property owners that have a lien due to a notice of violation are unable to sell their home. But the notice of violation is not a fine. It's not a monetary lien.
I get that. What's the lien then?
It's basically something that prevents you from selling your home.
A lien is the city fixing something, and the
But
city...
once the city has fixed city has fixed your sidewalk, the violation is cured, the lien is removed. Homeowners are only billed when we do the repairs. If we haven't done the repairs, we don't charge them. We only charge them after the repairs are done, and we only charge them for sidewalk violations that they're responsible for. So if you own a home and your entire sidewalk is damaged, but half of that damage is due to tree roots, the city does not charge you for the damage from the tree roots. We only charge you for the damage that we feel you're responsible for. And that will be listed in the preliminary inspection report. The preliminary inspection report will tell you where you have damage and what damage is not your responsibility if it's because of a tree.
I understand that 100%.
Nevada, hold on, George. To be clear, the lien is or is not a monetary amount.
Correct.
It is not.
Correct.
So the lien itself is a mechanism. It does not equal the bill. So just because you have a lien, doesn't mean that you owe money.
What it means is the sidewalk has to be repaired. Either you, the property owner, repair it, or the city repairs it.
So a lien is what you just said.
In this case.
So you put a lien on a property even though you may have not fixed that problem.
We only put a lien on a property if there's a notice of violation that's open.
That blows my mind because I always assume, I worked in the buildings department, and whenever DOB issued an unsafe building or whatever violation that HPD had to then go out and correct, they corrected it, and then they put a lien on the property so that they would recoup the money that the city spent on fixing that property. My point now is, you're telling us that a lien is no longer that.
No.
A lien has nothing to do with what the city spent to fix that problem.
No, what I'm saying is that I think you're mixing up apples and oranges here. Like the way the Department of Buildings handles liens, that's one way. The way the Department of Finance handles liens for sewer debt, that's another way. The way the Department of Transportation has issued liens, we only issue a lien when there is an open notice of violation. Once the property has been fixed, once the notice of violation has been lifted, we recoup the money we spend by sending a bill to the property owner. But that bill, once that bill has been sent, it means that the NOV has been lifted, the violation is being cured, the lien is gone. Now, if you don't pay your property taxes and you don't pay that surcharge, that will trigger the Department of Finance's mechanism for enforcing that. But as far as DOT is concerned, the sidewalk is fixed, the violation is cured, our job is done. That has been the policy, that has always been the policy not only as long as I've been working for this agency, but when I worked in the prior administration, when I worked for the city council, that has always been the policy, at least as I know, for the last 11 years. Now, what is new is that if DOT goes out, starting from, a couple of weeks ago, if we go out, inspect your property, and all the sidewalk damage is from tree roots, we're not going to issue a notice of violation, and we're not going to issue a lien.
Okay, I think Mr. McManus was next, and then this young lady, I'm sorry I don't recall your name.
Question about that.
Joe, I'm sorry, can you speak closer to the microphone? I'm having a hard time hearing you.
Yell, Joe, yell.
I have a question about the process a little bit. Now, when you see that it's tree roots, what happens?
So right now, we got, all the sidewalk inspections are complaint driven.
Sure.
From us and from parks. So it really depends how it's called into 311. If someone calls 311 and says, trees are damaging my sidewalk, that complaint will get sent to the Parks Department. The Parks Department will send out an inspector and only inspect the sidewalk damaged by the trees. If you call 311 and say there's a dangerous sidewalk condition and you don't mention trees, that complaint goes to DOT. A DOT inspector will go out, we'll inspect the entire block face, and we will issue notice of violations to every property owner who has sidewalk damage, whether it's tree related or not tree related.
So when somebody says it's tree roots, Parks goes out, says, yeah, it's tree roots. How does that get fixed? What's the process for that?
So the Parks Department has their own sidewalk repair program that is separate from ours. They call it the Trees and Sidewalk Program. So what will happen is they will go out, they will inspect, they will issue a rating out of 100.
Right.
So for example, let's say you have severe damage, they'll say, we're going to rate this a 91. It qualifies for the Tree and Sidewalk Program, and then a parks contractor will go out and repair only the sidewalk that's damaged by the tree. They won't touch anything else. They will just repair that.
Well,
so as part of this announcement, and really I don't want to speak on behalf of my sister agency, but my understanding is that Parks is going to increase their efforts to expedite repairs, and they are also going to lower the threshold that a property can qualify for the Tree and Sidewalks program. And just like DOT, their program only covers 1, 2, and 3 family homes. It doesn't cover commercial properties, It doesn't cover nonprofits, it doesn't cover large residential buildings.
So now the process is, we know it's Parks, it's roots, they're going to repair it. What happens if somebody falls in between? Who's liable?
Well,
now that the agency is determined that it's their issue, is it the owners or is it the cities?
So the liability doesn't change. So and this is where the notice of violation comes into play. So if, let's say, there is sidewalk damage from a tree, there's no notice of violation, the responsibility is completely on the city.
No, somebody falls.
Say again?
Somebody falls on your property because they're waiting for that sidewalk to be repaired by Parks.
But that's on the city.
So the city would be sued?
But that's the case today.
Okay.
That's the case right now. Right now, if the city, if there is sidewalk damage that has not been reported to the city at all, that's on the city. The liability is on the city, not the property owner. That doesn't stop property owners from getting sued, but legally the liability is on the city.
Thank you.
Now, if we go out and issue a notice of violation to the property owner, now the property owner is put on notice for the sidewalk defect.
Let's go back again because It's tree roots. The Parks
So it's
agrees
just,
it's tree.
I'm sorry, Joe. So it's just tree roots.
That's why I'm mentioning it right after that. It's just tree roots. Park says yes, it's tree roots. We got to repair it.
Right.
In between the time they repair it, somebody falls before it's repaired. Who they're saying it is tree roots. Are they liable, or is the homeowner liable?
The city's liable.
Thank you.
I have a couple of questions. Said you're going to address, the 50,000 open cases. Is there a timeline for that? And once you do notice some of these violations are going to be removed, will you be contacting each individual that has a violation directly?
So it's going to take us several months to go through all 50,000 open NOVs. And mind you, we're not re-inspecting them. We're basically re-evaluating the existing preliminary inspection reports. So we're not going to go out to the field and check these properties again. We're going to pull the inspection reports, examine them, and see are any 100% tree related. Of those 100% that are tree related, we will then notify the property owner, and then we will also notify the county clerk to remove the lien.
Okay, and then my other question is, some people have already been assessed on their taxes, payment plans. So they're still responsible for paying.
Correct. No, we're not. No, if you fixed it already on your own, or the city fixed it and billed you, that's like, we're not going back and retroactively refunding those. All we're doing retroactively is going back to existing and open NOVs that are only due to tree damage, and lifting those liens and canceling those NOVs and replacing them with another legal document that we will send the property owner.
I think the point that George was raising, that if there's a violation and it's done by a tree, and you put a lien, or a lien was placed on it, once you make that repair, it costs the City of New York, DOT, or Parks money. Are you, not you personally, but is that agency going to then look to recover that money that you expended from the property owner?
Yes, so the property owner will get a bill from the city on their property tax, but there won't be a lien anymore. So on your property tax bill, you'll see, so I've seen these many times. I used to work a lot with constituents who had tree damage or were part of this, had this happen to them. You get your property tax bill, it lays out what your quarterly charge is, and then there will be probably a line underneath of it which will say surcharge, and that will be the cost of the sidewalk repair.
I think that's worse for a homeowner, because again, putting the lien is terrible, but it's not something that you have to pay immediately. Your property tax bill has to get paid immediately, and again, if you don't pay your property tax bill, what happens? It gets put into a lien.
Yes, but the Department of Finance, and I know this because this is something that I dealt with, not so much at DOT anymore, but when I worked for a council member, I often dealt with homeowners who had gotten their sidewalks repaired by the city. The Department of Finance will work with the homeowner to come up with a payment plan and installments for that sidewalk surcharge.
The point that I was making that has driven this for the last 4 years is that, similar to the lawsuit that DOT is responding to now on the pedestrian ramps for every sidewalk, they have to fix that. They're legally required to add pedestrian ramps everywhere in the city so that they're handicap accessible. The irony in that is that even if you can access a sidewalk, many of those sidewalks are horrible. They have potholes on sidewalks, they have tree root damage, they have other kinds of damage just because of snow and rain and the elements of earth. I just think that DOT should implement a capital plan, not only to fix every sidewalk in the city of New York, similar to what the lawsuit did on the pedestrian ramps, but also to complete streets that are unfinished in the district. That's it.
Well, I think that got us back to the reason last month's question, which was as you are doing these ramps, the question came up, well, do you look at the street?
So no. So the pedestrian, and we were here back in, I want to say it was like March, when I brought our directors of the ped ramp program. In part because, as George mentioned, the city entered an agreement that we will expeditiously repair and upgrade all roughly 500,000 pedestrian ramps in the city. And I actually think it's 500,000 intersections with pedestrian ramps in the city, so times that by 4. We are going to expeditiously repair all of them. So what we're doing right now is our crews will go out there, inspect, and if they can make the repairs, they will repair those pedestrian ramps or upgrade those pedestrian ramps that need it, and then move on to the next pedestrian ramp. If we were then to sort of add additional adjacent sidewalk work, that would just delay the ability of the city to expeditiously repair every pedestrian ramp. So the pedestrian ramp contract that's out there is just for pedestrian ramps. The sidewalk program is a separate contractor that is doing sidewalk repairs.
Is there a possibility or some effort that can be made to, I'm here repairing the ramp, but I see a huge pothole 2 feet away from said ramp, or some other issue with the sidewalk? Is there where a note can be taken, an advisory can be made? Because although George makes many points, this one last month, it was unclear, because I would think we all would think that it's to DOT's advantage. You put in a ramp, but now you still have the issue of sidewalk that's unsafe, or just, in some cases non-existent.
So this goes back to my original point. According to the city administrative code, the responsibility to maintain and upkeep sidewalk is not the city's, it's the property owners. So what we could do, and I'm not recommending this, we don't do this because this would cause a lot more headache for everybody, is what would happen is if one of our contractors notice a problem on the sidewalk, what they would do then is just notify our highway inspection and quality assurance unit, who would then go out and then issue the homeowner a notice of violation. Because the responsibility of repairing the sidewalk is not the city's, it is under the administrative code, the property owner.
Fully aware. I just think that
Now, if you think that the enforcement mechanisms that the city uses are not strong enough, that's a different question.
Is there a follow-up to that, George? I just want to give George an opportunity.
I'm sorry?
Is there a follow-up?
No, I've said my piece.
Wow. Yes.
Commissioner, in the administrative code, what does it say related to city sidewalks that are not up to code?
We are responsible for maintaining them.
So, if a request is sent by a community board of a strip of sidewalk that we know that the city owns,
right,
you're responsible to repair it.
It would be the responsibility of whatever agency is adjacent to that sidewalk. So right now, the only agency that we repair sidewalks for is NYCHA.
Okay. So if there was a condition where there was a sidewalk and you knew the agency, let's say in the case it was HPD, it was on a site that was going to be developed shortly. When I say shortly, maybe the next 6 to 10 months or longer, HPD would then get a notice from you.
Well, actually, if there's a new construction or if HPD is constructing a new development, then as part of their builder's pavement plan, they are going to be required to build out the sidewalk adjacent to the property, plus make certain roadway improvements.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Just one question. The 50,000 that you got out in the air, that possibly there are some liens on properties on those 50,000. Am I correct?
So all 50,000 and open NOVs have liens.
Okay. So since the city now has changed its policy, have you notified the financial institutions to make sure that those liens are not valid? Because if I want to sell my house and I have that lien, you know, what's the procedures in me getting that lien off?
So the procedure is that we are currently we're going to reevaluate all 50,000 open NOVs, find the ones that are only from tree damage, remove the NOV, and then contact the county clerk to remove the lien.
But are you going to send out notices that that lien is taken off and it's not valid?
Well, we're going to send a notice to the property owner, and we're going to and then we're going to have the lien removed from the county clerk. Once the county clerk removes the lien, if anyone's going to sell their home, the lien won't appear.
I have a question. That's on it. The same stuff. On it. In a situation where you have a homeowner or a commercial property, because commercial properties are not affected by this, that don't have sidewalks, how do we get them to build a sidewalk?
We issue them a notice of violation.
Okay. And that's it.
That's right now the current procedure, and this is what I said earlier. Right now, if you have a sidewalk defect or don't have a sidewalk, we go out there, we inspect, we issue the property owner a notice of violation. If you feel that the city's enforcement mechanisms should change, that's a separate conversation.
And if the community board requested a capital reconstruction to build a sidewalk and half of the street, is that something that DOT would entertain?
So a capital reconstruction would have to be in the event that a street is not built or partially built. We wouldn't do a capital project. If we did a capital project for sidewalks, it would really be a full street reconstruction. And yes, that is something that, you know, you would have to put on your, budget priority list, and it would go to us, and then we would work with OMB to see if the funding is available for the capital project. We're currently, as you know, in the process of reconstructing a couple of streets in your district that are in very poor condition, and that is part of the community board OMB DOT capital process.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, my question is on a slightly different topic. When a utility goes in and does street repair work.
I'm sorry, Greg. This is only about sidewalks.
Okay.
I'm just kidding. No, you could answer your question.
I wanted to stay in order.
Sorry, I didn't have I didn't have coffee this morning.
Okay, I'll get you. When a utility comes in and does work, and they complete the work, how much time do they have before they have to restore the street? Whereas utilities come in and do work and they leave obstructions and they leave other kind of work, is there a time frame that they have to sort of restore the street?
When they finish their work, they're supposed to make the restoration as soon as possible. If there is a delay, then we intervene, we involve, we'll issue a corrective action request to the utility for them to,
But there's no set time. They don't say like within 30
I could get
days.
back to you on what the set time is. I mean, we usually just say like, once you're done, like you better be out there as soon as possible to fix it, but I can get you what the time frame is. I don't know off the top
Thanks
of my
a
head.
lot.
Any other questions for the commissioner? But I want to thank you so much for coming and responding so quickly since the last meeting. It's always a pleasure. Friend to the Bronx.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy, and thank you very much, everyone. Have a good afternoon, and I'll see you, I will probably not see you after December, but I will see you before December.
Okay. So,
No, I'm sorry. I've told some of you, have not told all of you, in late December, I'm going to be going on paternity leave. So I will be out of the office probably for a month.
So congratulations is in order.
So get your requests in before December 19th.
So that officially ends our presentations. We, of course, at this point offer opening for announcements from the boards, if there are any events coming up that you'd like to put on record. And then from the gallery, if there are any particulars that they'd like to discuss. So, anything? Okay, we'll Mr. McManus and then.
Maybe this is just myself, but it seems that when I go to a lot of these community events, I'm the only person that's talking about the 2020 census. So I don't know if as much information should be given out, or is it being planned not as well? Maybe I'm wrong, but it seems that people haven't been given that information. I think it's just a comment. It's nothing else.
I am, I feel like my whole heart has been pulled out of my chest and just thrown on the floor. This is my complete passion, the census, for 2020 census, and you haven't been a part of our planning sessions or the borough president's complete the count committee, and so I must be doing something amazingly.
No, I mean, I worked on the 2010 census. I worked with somebody that was actually going around and doing it, and I took him to every community event in Community Board 11. And I get all this stuff. I have the little flyers at the office, so I bring them to every community meeting that I go to. But I don't hear anybody else mentioning it.
Okay, the borough president has a complete the count committee. We've done a kickoff, and we have a meeting coming up for the purposes of disseminating information. We'd like everybody to be a active participant in the committee. When's the complete the count committee meeting? I'm sorry? Complete the count committee meeting. When is it? Yeah. So she's gonna check for the exact date, because I don't remember off the top of my head. Please excuse me. And then we'll make that announcement. It's at Hostos. And so, as I said, I want everybody to be active in that. It is important. It is obviously
you're preaching to the choir here. I agree with you.
For so many reasons. So, thank you for bringing that up. Sometimes even important things slip through the cracks. So I appreciate you bringing that to our attention, and
thank you.
We'll have an announcement. Yes, sir. Your name, please.
Hi, good morning, everyone. My name is Jermaine Williams. I'm the new liaison for HRA representing the Bronx, Manhattan, and Staten Island. So just to put that out there. I do apologize if I have made your district service cabinet meeting this month, but guarantee I will make them in the coming months going forward. In the meantime, I will give you my email address just in case there's any issues that you have concerning HRA, which is, my email address is williamsje@dss.nyc.gov. And one quick announcement, as you heard, the U.S. Department of Homeland Security published a final public charge. Rule changed on August 14, 2019. The Trump administration is making it harder for immigrants to get green cards, certain type of visas they may use and or likely to use, and certain benefits and programs. So for anyone worried about public charge rules that may affect them, they can consult a city-funded, free, safe immigration legal service provider by calling Action NYC at 1-800-354-0365 and just say public charge. And thank you and have a great day.
Thank you. And are there any other folks that'd like to make a comment or make an announcement? So on the Borough President's website, we have a flyer for this event, and it is the Borough President's led Complete the Count Committee meeting. It is October 3rd at 10 a.m. is at Hostos Community College, and it is it's at the Savoy Multi-Purpose Room, second floor, 120 East 149th Street. And on that date, there's a rather robust agenda that includes Citizens Committee for Children of New York, and they're going to talk about civic engagement around that, plus NALEO's representation, and they'll talk about the census campaign managers, and also there will be discussion around grants that may be available for small community-based organizations, and obviously the limitations around that and what the possibilities are. So we are looking forward to having a really robust conversation about the census, and at this point the objective of the Complete the Count Committee is to build a small militia, is what I'm calling it, of folks that we can disseminate into the community in order to make sure that we are focusing our efforts. As we know, the Bronx is one of the most difficult counties in the Bronx. For this, we don't mind Brooklyn being ahead of us on this list, but after Brooklyn and in the state, the Bronx is one of the most difficult to count areas for a multitude of reasons: language, status, and many other things. So we'd like to have everyone here participate. If you've noticed that even at our cultural events, we've asked the census to table at those events so that it's a part of the conversation. I would encourage that you do that also. If you need a connection to the census, we can provide that. Just check in with us. At your board meetings, at your cultural events, at your holiday parties, it is the census is coming very quickly, and it is different this year, and it's going to be highly technical in terms of it's going to start out with a web-based connection instead of the paper form that we're used to, right? So although that may be helpful in a day-to-day tracking, it may be a challenge for some of the older folks that are just getting sort of acclimated to the paper and sending that in on time. Now we have a new way of doing it, and so there'll be a need for discussion around how to bring that into our communities and be more mindful of that effort. So as I said, the census is very, very near and dear to me and to the borough president as well. We want to make sure that we increase the count of the Bronx. We say 1.4 million people. We want to make sure we're right. We want to make sure that we're correct.
I'll resend this out to everybody.
And Tom is whispering in my ear that he's going to send it all out, that flyer out to everyone, to make sure that you have it. And also send it out in your, please post it and send it out into your universe. And the last announcement that I would like to make is that today, this evening actually, between 4 and 6, the borough president will be hosting an educational event around learning how to prevent opioid overdose and how to use the naloxone. And so this is something that has been very helpful in decreasing opioid overdose deaths. And so again, it's another health issue that we think is important that is disseminated into the community. We know this is happening. How can we prevent a death? And we hope that that everyone will take part in this. It's today, 4 o'clock. Now, if there's any other questions, comments, or concerns, we'll take that now. If not, then we will adjourn. Seeing none, thank you so much for your time. See you next month.